I'm Caitlin McFarland, co-president of ATX TV and the newest Fatal Attraction fan.
And I'm Jen Morgan, director of programming, and even newer Fatal Attraction fan.
Okay, I don't think it has to be a competition.
Listen, I won't be ignored. Okay, sorry. The show really gets the blood pumping. It's a little intense.
This is something that we have that it has in common with the original film for sure, but whether or not you've seen Fatal Attraction, the movie, Fatal Attraction, the series is doing something newer, deeper, and entirely its own.
Besides starring Joshua Jackson and Lizzie Kaplan, who have chemistry and charisma that is off the charts, it is also made by some of the best creative folks in the business, namely showrunner, writer, executive producer Alex Cunningham, director, executive producer Silvertree, who are joined by Alyssa Jirrels to talk to us about this unbelievably addictive series on Paramount+.
In case you missed it, the first few episodes are waiting for you right now on Paramount+, with new episodes every Sunday. So go pour a very tall glass of wine, settle in, and make a night of it. You will thank us later.
And now we're going to turn it over to the experts and bring on our moderator, Variety's Emily Longeretta.
Hi, guys. So excited to be here and to talk all things Fatal Attraction with such amazing, amazing women, starting with the showrunner, writer, and executive producer, Alexandra Cunningham, director and executive producer, Silvertree, and of course, one of our stars who plays Alan Gallagher, Alyssa Jirrels. I'm sorry. We tried.
Either or.
Thank you guys so much for doing this today. The show is so incredible. And as the audience knows, we are already 3 episodes in and can't get enough. But I kind of want to roll it back a little bit for those who don't know kind of the story of how this was created and how we kind of started. So Alexandra, I think it's probably best to start with you of how this came to you and how it kind of sparked your interest from, of course, the film that was many years ago, but now turning it into a series.
Well, I mean, I think probably because on my resume, I have other examples of maybe heightened storytelling like Desperate Housewives and Dirty John. When Paramount was going through their library, they thought of me for Fatal Attraction. And my initial impulse was to say, absolutely not. That's insane. Who would do that? That's so intimidating. And so I was going to just watch it one more time before I wrote the polite email saying no. And clearly that was, maybe they were expecting that that's what I would do, because it is kind of, once you engage with it again, it is irresistible on a number of levels. And so yeah, that's kind of why we're here, because Lizzie is the one who's pointed out that you can't watch the movie with the same headspace that anyone was watching it when it came out. We just aren't the same as a culture or an audience, and we ask too many questions now about psychology and motives and representation and privilege and power dynamics and all kinds of things. And so that is kind of all of those things, while still loving the original, are kind of why we're all here, I think. I don't want to speak for these guys because they're perfectly capable.
Well, yeah, Silver, let's throw to you and kind of how you came to be part of this.
Well, once Alex was brave enough to sign on, I'm sure that she did a bunch of other things behind the scenes, but they needed to have a director involved. So I had a Zoom with her, and she started kind of laying out her philosophy about the retelling, really focusing on these women, Alex and Ellen in particular, who were not given maybe the runway that they deserved just because features are feature length, right? So we were going to have 8 episodes to explore some really interesting mental health issues, as well as like PTSD for a child who's gone through these things. And all of it just sounded really interesting and totally not what I expected when somebody said, hey, you want to meet about the retelling of Fatal Attraction? I kind of thought they were going to ratchet up the gore and the sex and all of those things, but instead it was just such a smart, interesting, unique approach. So I got really excited.
Yeah, absolutely. And Alyssa, obviously for you, I mean, the story of Ellen in the movie is very different. So because we don't get to see adult Ellen. So what was your kind of approach to it? Did you go back and watch the movie? Were you familiar with the movie? What was your experience there?
Yeah, I hadn't actually seen the movie originally. My mom was very excited when I got the audition. She was really excited about it. I was like, I haven't seen this before. But Yeah, I mean, I watched a little bit of it before we started shooting, but it was kind of like, I mean, Amanda and I sort of talk about this. Like, I was so the initial script that I had originally gotten, which was just the pilot, it's so, there's so much in it already. There's so much going on, and I think also such a huge part of like a process as an actor is figuring out what this person's childhood is like and what their past is like. And I already knew that it was going to be set in the two timelines, and you have the advantage of seeing Ellen's backstory and her childhood in this version, and I didn't really want to go into something that may have been different or get too much of an idea in my head. So I watched a little bit of it and then I stopped. But yeah, there was so much in the scripts that was going to be my primary focus. Yeah.
I mean, the movie was 14 years old when Alyssa was born.
The movie was
So,
14 years
I mean,
old.
I just want to torture myself with that yet again. I haven't
He
said
was
it out
an
loud.
adolescent at my birth. Yeah.
Okay, that's a great way to put it and to make
Right?
everybody.
Just really
Oh,
squeeze
man.
the knife.
Sorry,
Yeah.
guys. Sorry about that.
So insane. Well, I kind of want to get into a little bit of, the intimacy scenes. I think something, Silver, you said that was so interesting was that a lot of people do assume, oh, it's being remade, it's going to be like these crazy sex scenes, this crazy violent situation. And while it has all of those things and they're important to the story, that's not the focus at all. There's so much more deep storytelling. But in the first couple episodes, we do get a good amount of intimacy, whether it's between Josh and Amanda or Josh and Lizzie. All three of them raved about you, Silver, about being on set during those scenes and how important it was and how helpful you were to that process. So can you talk a little bit about that and how you kind of went about that?
Yeah, I mean, I was very, I wasn't intimidated by those scenes. I've done too many of these scenes to even talk
such
about.
thing.
It's embarrassing how many.
No such thing.
And I mean, I've done like the craziest things where like the camera operator is the perspective of the person on top of someone else, and like so many technical versions of two people coming together. So I think I was excited to approach it how I always approach intimacy, which is like a stunt, right? So it's like a physical process that needs to tell a story to the audience that is cheated, to make it feel more or less real, when of course we can't be punching people or actually intimate on set. So we have all sorts of amazing protocols and professionals that help execute this. And we had Nicole Randall on this set, who I've done four or five other series with. So she and I have a shorthand. I always storyboard, show her the storyboards. She talks to the actors about it. It's all kind of boring, honestly, in the best possible safe way that makes it 2023. I couldn't be more thrilled. It's very by the numbers. Like, there are no surprises on set. By the time we get there and are shooting a sex scene, it's probably the least creatively malleable set you'll ever be on, because I'm never going to like ask an actor to try something that we haven't talked about in advance. And if you're lucky, like we were, you have actors who already have an established trust and chemistry from shooting other scenes, which we absolutely did on this show. And Josh is such a mensch and like amazing partner for anyone, both these ladies involved, and I know they felt that right away. So it was just it was a lot of fun. It was fun to see it come together. We had beautiful sets and places to carry out these scenes, and hopefully people enjoy it. I think the chemistry is off the charts with all of them.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't want Amanda to get mad, but I was thinking about this. Well, maybe I do. I don't know. I'm fine. I can take her. But I was thinking about, to Silver's point about Nicole spends all this time talking to each of the actors beforehand. What makes you feel comfortable, uncomfortable, parts of your body do you like? What sex scenes don't you think works in sex scenes on screen, and what do you think always works, kind of thing. And then she told us basically the upshot of the conversations, which the actors knew she would. And in Amanda's interview, Nicole said to her, Josh wants you to know that he has a beard, because I guess they hadn't interacted yet. And Amanda went, yeah, tell him I do too. I was just like,
I forgot about that.
Tell him me too. Tell him I have a beard too. And I was
Most Amanda thing to say.
exactly. Anyway, sorry.
No, I love that. That's so amazing.
Chuckle.
But I think that also proves just how I feel like this cast as a group gets along so well, really likes each other, is very comfortable with each other, which is not always the case. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I would say, Alexandra, that starts at the top. So that's kudos to you.
Well, with me and Silver, because Silver, was there the second she shot the first 3 episodes as a block. Like, yes, I was there, but yeah. I mean,
We
when
love
it's
them.
both good and bad when you have to be like, Josh, shut up, camera's ready. Come stand on your mark. Stop telling that. You can tell them later. Like that kind of, I mean, it's the best of all possible worlds. And yet, when it's happening, you're like, I cannot believe this. Like
Totally.
herding cats.
How did you-
Amazingly attractive cats.
Yeah, seriously. How did you guys go about deciding how to balance out the timelines? Because it's almost jarring in the beginning when we cut too past, because it's like, oh, we're seeing this it starts in a diner that is very obviously, you can tell it's not present day. So how did you guys kind of decipher how much was it going to be 50-50? Was it going to be 70? Was that something that you guys had a constant conversation about?
I mean, I love that Alyssa's here, because the timeline concept actually began with, watching the original movie and knowing that I could do it if I wanted to. The conversation with myself that I've always had watching it, going, how is this child processing this emotional violence? Like, for a movie that ends on a photograph of a happy family, like, oh, they're all going to be fine. And it's like, what? I have follow-up questions, because it was possible as a child in the 80s that like maybe Beth and Dan were like, let's just never speak of it again and she'll forget. She won't forget, right? Like, body keeps the score. That's not going to happen. So what was going to be the way that I was actually going to be able to see how this child processed this trauma and what kind of adult she became and what love and trust and relationships mean to her? And I was like, well, I need to see her as an adult.
Yeah.
Even a young adult. And so then the time frame was like, okay, well, then there it is. You're doing 2 storylines. Good luck, everyone. And then everything else kind of came from there, except there had been it was probably Dateline, because I live and breathe Dateline. So it was some form of a Dateline where there was a crime. An ex-husband had killed a wife and disappeared the body. He worked at the airport. He put it in her car in long-term parking, like this kind of thing. And he was convicted of 2nd-degree murder here in Los Angeles County, got 15 years to life, and then was paroled after 15 years. And I was like, what? and so then I asked Kevin, who was our collaborator, whose history is the criminal justice system. And he was like, yeah, I mean, overcrowding, likelihood to reoffend, blah, blah, blah. I was like, that's nuts. And yet Dan Gallagher is probably the guy who's going to be first in line for that. If they're like, look, we need room. Get out of here. And so then those things kind of started to weave together. And then unfortunately, all the other characters except for Alex had to accommodate that. And Ellen was going to be the only actor, obviously 2 actors playing that part. Everyone else, it was like, guess what? You get to come to work early and have our amazing makeup artist who had just come from Better Call Saul. So she knows something about aging characters back and forth, showing up with all her super cool sci-fi prosthetics. And like, that's what we're doing. So yeah, it all kind of started with Ellen. All the things start with Alyssa.
Oh my God.
Well, Alyssa,
Everybody always asks me if I play my 7-year-old self. It's an authentic question I get often. Are you playing yourself? I'm like, yeah, I'm on my knees. So it's gonna be amazing.
Yeah. You can do amazing things with it. Like, it's reverse Irishman.
Yeah, I know.
We're
People
gonna
have
make you
genuinely
into a
asked me
baby?
this
What?
question. I'm like, what kind of show do you think this is? No.
One with a much larger budget than we had, right?
Yeah, holy shit. Yeah, I guess
Even
so.
is that?
well, Alyssa, why don't we talk a little about how you kind of created Ellen and crafted her and the kind of things that she's going through? Because as Alex just said, kind of the processing that she's going to, and I love that we're showing her in therapy and showing that that's something that's important in her life. And clearly she even feels that it's important in her life, and that she's even talking to her mom about therapy. Like there's this huge communication there. So how did you kind of go about tapping into her?
Oh man, I mean, there was a lot of discussion, and I think it's really one of those things where, for me, it was she goes through quite an arc, and I think from the get-go, I found her to be like, sometimes you get roles and you feel very, very like deeply connected to them from the get-go, and you feel like you kind of project your own personal experience onto them, and then like those are never the ones that you get because you're projecting your personal experience. But like this was one that I just felt was I found her to be very curious. I found the writing to be, it's very, not curious isn't the right word, but very, very interesting in how she was processing things. I thought the writing was really good, but even in the first episode, you know, there's the situation in that her father is getting out of prison. She hasn't seen him in 15 years. And what she seems to be doing throughout the whole first episode is just sort of processing and relaying information. And I was like, that's a very curious way of going about a massive emotional event. There was just, okay, she's taking in and she's communicating. And I just found that to be very different. And it sort of pointed to a lot of symptoms of things, maybe some intellectualization and maybe some bit of a detachment from what was actually going on with her. And then it was just, I mean, we had a lot of conversations, Silver and Alex and I, early on in the process. We had a text chain, and then it was just like, it was just a lot of clarifying, like, as I got the scripts, and it was kind of a build throughout, because I would learn more throughout the whole process. But it was, it was a lot of just like, is it this thing or is it this thing? Because it's all there, like it's all there on the page. But then it was also, did a lot of research into Carl Jung, because that's such a huge part of what she's, you know, her entire thesis on life, really. And I think the thesis on the show too, a lot of research into that. I talked to Jonathan Mueller. Is it Mueller? It's Mueller, right? I talked to Jonathan Mueller, who's a forensic psychologist, about a whole myriad of things, including trauma and PTSD and disassociation, all this stuff. And it just, I don't know, it sort of was built by symbiosis. And then by the end, I felt like I had a bodily experience of it, which is, I guess, what you can hope for. It took a second to like shake it off.
Yeah.
What you want.
Well, Alex and Silver, I mean, how much of the scripts and the story, I mean, obviously we're not spoiling anything here, the 3 episodes that are out already, there's a lot of twists and turns throughout the whole season. So how much of the scripts did the cast read ahead of time? Were you giving them, like, how much did they know of the story?
I think when we started shooting, because only because I knew I was going to be directing, and I didn't want to still be trying to write or rewrite when that was happening to the extent I could avoid it. There were a lot of scripts available. Did people read them? I don't know. Like that's, you know, and it's completely, I know from, I'm trying to figure out how to say this without spoiling anything. I knew from Alyssa and Isabella Briggs, the amazing actor who's playing Ellen's only friend. And they started blowing up my phone, asking me a question where I was like, oh, they need more scripts. Because I was like, I understand why they're asking me this, but that's because they don't know what happens, and I don't know why I didn't anticipate them thinking this was where it was going. So that kind of thing. But then, you know, sometimes it's like actors reading books when they're source material. Like there's the I want to know everything actor and what everyone is thinking, and there's the I wouldn't know that because I'm experiencing it actor. So of course I don't want any of that information. So I just always kind of go, there's links if you want them. Like, good luck, everybody. So yeah, they could have. It didn't matter. I mean, in the performances, like you know, it doesn't matter one way or the other. They did everything they needed to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I also want to talk to you guys about a little about the rest of the casting process and how it was that you got this group of people. I mean, like you said, very talented, very attractive, all have amazing chemistry. It's not very often that we see that. So what was that process like? Were you watching a ton of self-tapes? What was that like?
I mean, I was going to be a casting director because I just assumed I would not make money as a writer. Since I started as a playwright, that was a pretty reasonable assumption. I was in Manhattan as a playwright, like not gonna be able to pay rent with this. So I worked for Warner Brothers TV casting, and that's what I was going to do. So casting is my favorite and my best of all the great things I get to do. And so I already had some people in mind. Silver was very gracious when she came on board, that so much of that work had been done that ordinarily she would get to participate in. So thank God she was happy with the choices. But Amanda, I had obviously worked with Amanda before, never want to work without Amanda again. Toby Huss was the person that I had in mind. Lizzie, I wrote Alex for because I had this version of Alex for because I had met her before. Josh, I had just watched Dr. Death because we had worked with Maggie Kiley, the director, and Christian Slater on Betty with Amanda. And so he was a revelation to me in that show. And so when he was on a list from the studio, I was kind of like, oh, I can take this off the table right here. And then I'm trying to think. Brian Goodman, who plays Arthur, has been in almost every show I've done, and has a very interesting background that just really informs him as an actor. And Reno had been on Good Girls, which is run by two really good friends of mine, and I just have been a fan of him since Mike and Molly, I guess. So Alyssa of the series regulars was really the only she's a wild card. No, but when we watch the casting tapes, you try not to make choices too early. It's not smart to do that. I mean, obviously you're checking off people. I definitely want to bring them back, but I have to say, she was like, in my gut, it was like, you really shouldn't make up your mind this early. But and we called her back, and we saw tons of people, and they were all amazing, and it all goes in the Rolodex of your brain for later. But it really was one of those things where it was like, I think basically the first one I watched is gonna be, I know, right? Crazy, that. I told you so.
The first, I didn't know it was so early on. I didn't know it was the first.
Yeah, it was pretty early. So it was kind of yes, but also we have to callbacks. What's the matter with you? Yeah. Anyway, I'm talking a lot. Silver, you say.
No, I think you and I both were like, she's it.
Yeah.
I remember watching Alyssa's. I remember what she was wearing, everything. It was so
a combination of, she could be the rom-com CW superstar, not to take anything away from rom-coms or CW, but you get an image in your head, right? When I say that, she could own those genres, but she's so weird. She makes such weird choices, right out of the gate, and you're like, I love watching a hot person make weird choices. I don't know what's gonna happen. It's like Mads Mikkelsen. What is that guy gonna do?
It's the best compliment ever.
Yeah, and so that, I think Silver and I both responded to that. It's like, she's so beautiful and she's so weird. Oh my God, I love it. I don't know anything about that person.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Alyssa, had you watched any of the projects that your co-stars had done before? Had you been familiar with Dawson's Creek, or had you watched Dirty John? Or, I mean, Lizzie Kaplan's been in a million things. I'm trying to name things, but
no, I was a massive Amanda Peet fan. I have loved Amanda I just think that she's one of the most grounded, captivating, relaxed, present actors I've ever seen. Everything that she's ever in, I'm just like, this woman is she's living in everybody else's acting. She has such a presence to me. So I've loved her forever. And I mean, Lizzie as well. I actually, my ex-boyfriend when I was 16 I remember he once said to me, he was like, you know what? I just feel like Lizzie Kaplan, like there's an energy that she has and something about the choices that she's made in her career. She just really reminds me of you. And I really think that you have some kind of connection to her in some way. So that was always like in my mind, I've always loved her. She's amazing. But I mean, thank God I hadn't watched Dawson's Creek. Thank God I hadn't like watched any of that because I would have been way too nervous. I felt like it was really good. I knew who Josh was, but he was the only person I think who was like, well, you know what, Lizzie was attached too, but he was attached from the very beginning, and I knew he was attached, and I knew he was going to be Dan. And so from the audition on, he was Dan to me, and he was the person who was in my brain. He was like, it took me a second to like let him be Josh, actually, because he was so Dan in my mind. And I think if he had been Pacey, it would have been harder to do any of that. would have been much more challenging. But I have to watch now. I was like in the hotel the other day when we were doing the whole press junket, and I was like, should I spend my evening watching Dawson's Creek?
Together.
You should
What'd you
do
say?
it.
Pacey brings cultures together.
100%.
I just went to France, and like all, no matter, such a wide like cross section of French women coming up to me after the screening, being like, and now we must speak about Pacey, and I would be like, oh my God, what? Like, you look like Iggy Pop would be your like ideal. Like, this is amazing. Like, just all different walks of life. Pacey,
give the women what they want, you know.
Yeah.
Silver, I want to ask you about filming the different POVs and how you kind of went about directing those scenes, because in the first 2 episodes, we're mostly in Dan's POV, a little bit in Ellen's. We aren't much in Alex's, and then in episode 3, we really switch gears there. How much?
We're never in Alex's in the first 2.
Are we not at all?
No.
I guess oh my gosh, I don't know why I just
Silver, like, you know, that she's got me over her shoulder like a horrible angel of death, being like, only Dan for the first 2. Like, yeah.
So I guess what was that shift like going into Alex's point of view, especially because there are scenes that we saw from his point of view, like walking to the elevator and those things, walking in the courtroom, things that, you know, obviously in my mind go to a show like The Affair and things that I'm like, are they the same thing as a critical watcher? So how was that for you creating that?
I mean, that was one of my very favorite things about the scripts when I got it. First of all, just getting to live through these moments, finally getting to be in Alex's POV in the world of Fatal Attraction in a larger way was really fun. But also visually getting to distinguish between the two, I was really excited about that challenge. And I ended up, I think, landing on using like a wide angle, like a 45mm lens on all of her stuff, and like putting the camera up a little bit to make us feel a little bit off kilter when we're in her POV, because of course, if you're really in someone's POV, you're not looking at them, right? If we're being honest with ourselves, you know, so you have to create something that feels like a perspective when you're in fact looking at them. And so lensing it differently and making us feel like a little uncomfortable because she sees the world a little differently was a choice I made early on. And then logistically speaking, it was really funny. We have really smart actors, obviously. But Lizzie and Josh, a couple times, I remember them saying to me, I have no idea, like, what are we doing? I have no idea whose perspective this is, what's going on. And we were like talking about the scripts, and we did our like early Zoom, because nobody's allowed to talk or touch each other in person back then. We did our early Zooms, and I decided I'm not gonna ever tell the actors whose point of view we're in. And I think I told you that, Alex, early on. And it became really clear to me that it was not their burden to carry whose point of view we were in. And I think just it's human nature to try to do things when we're told something's in our perspective that might not be totally authentic to the moment. And I also wanted to be really honest with the audience and tell the exact same story, regardless of the point of view we're in. So again, like I didn't want Josh to get up more quickly when it's his perspective than he did when it's Lizzie's perspective. So I didn't ever tell them whose perspective we were in, but shot the scenes all at once and just lensed them differently. And then, you know, sometimes would just give performance notes tweaking based on whose point of view we were in. But luckily they're really trusting and generous and just went with it. So hopefully it works.
It definitely does. It definitely does. Guys, we're out of time. Thank you guys so much for doing this today. I'm so excited to watch the rest of Fatal Attraction. Everyone watching can tune in on Paramount Plus.